Hey guys, I'm Brooks. I was helping the Landers folks out today with some boat maintenance, and thought we would do a video on boat maintenance. Not every day, unfortunately, do we get to go fishing. Sometimes we have to work on the boat, but there's some joy we take in that, and it's good to make sure your boat is capable of bringing you home safely and staying afloat the whole time you're out there. So what we did today, the project is, we were fixing the scuppers in the splash well. We looked around for some videos on this and how we would make this work, make this happen, and there really wasn't anything out there. So we thought we would film how we did it. It's a straightforward project, and I think if you, just with some basic tools and some basic knowledge, a little bit of patience, it doesn't take a long time to do it. These things are about 15 years old on our boat, and they seem to be original. We don't know we're the second owner of this boat, but they're a TH Marine product, great company. And yeah, so we'll just go through how we did it. All right, everybody, I wanted to start out by letting y'all know it was hot and still on the day we did this. It's the middle of July here in Texas. And the first step on doing this project is to take a little bit of braided fishing line and run it around the existing scupper. And what this does is it helps to break the connection of the old sealant with the old scupper. You see I've got a little bit of masking tape here on this one. What we did there is we thought, oh, it would be cool if this thing would, pop out and still be connected to the boat so we didn't have to fish it out of the water. You'll see here in a minute that completely failed, and all it really did was give us something to work around. So don't worry about doing this in your project. Just get that line in there, go ahead and get that sealant connection cut. After you've got the sealant cut, the best way to knock these out that we found is we took a 24mm socket with a connection, an extension on it, and we hit that with a dead blow hammer from inside the boat, and that did a pretty good job of knocking that original scupper out from the back of the boat. You'll see here as we get to tapping on it, it kind of pops out. We make pretty good progress, and then it just breaks the tape and falls clean in the water. You see that the originals are still intact. I get a little bit of moss and mold growing, but it doesn't look like there was any water intrusion, so we're good to just proceed with this process. Get the front one out. We just took an 1.5 PVC pipe. Take that, stick it into the hole, and give it a nice solid tap, and it knocks the front one out. Same thing here, it was still intact, so we didn't have any concerns about water intrusion. Give it a quick wash down, knock some of that moss and mold off of there. A little bit of Dawn soap there in the stream gives you enough side. And I'll take a minute here to talk about the Shurhold brushes. I use these things every day in the boat. The last one lasted about 6 years. This one is over a year old. The handle's 7 or 8 years old. Made in the USA. Can't recommend their products enough. For the removal of the existing sealant that you still see there around the hull on both sides, we originally were thinking maybe a razor blade would do that, but that quickly proved to be more labor than it was worth. And we used this vinyl decal remover wheel that we've used before to get lettering off of a boat and various other things whenever we want to change something up. There's a couple styles to this, but we found that this solid wheel style worked the best, and it just wore that existing sealant all the way down to the fresh gel coat. So the amount of labor that we put into it to clean this off was unbelievably small. And we did learn one thing while we were doing this, where it was still wet. It was very hard to clean off any of the sealant. So word of the wise, make sure that your area is dry. These things work on a friction type basis, and they are very similar to a pencil eraser material. So as it spins there, it kind of wears away at the caulk or vinyl or whatever it is there. So a little tip there for you. And y'all let me know in the comments if you use something else to get sealant and caulk off. We'd love to know, but as far as we've used, like I said, we use the ones with an airway in them, and these are the solid wheel, and we think the solid wheel keeps its shape better and tends to remove vinyl lettering and now caulk and sealant better than the airway style. You need to repeat the process on the inside of the boat, get it good and dry and cleaned up before you start running the wheel on it. You will notice that I do have my gloves on at this point. In this project, you will be using sealants and some solvents like acetone. You want to keep that stuff off your skin best you can. That stuff's not good to be exposed to. So we get the wheel going in here, and it's a little bit of an awkward shape to get in and clean all of the residue sealant that was left behind. It did a pretty good job in there, but with all the steering cables and the way that drain is shaped there's just no way we were going to be able to get that all the way in there. So what we did is we reached into our fillet table and got this Dexter boning knife, and the way that its blade is curved there at the end really helped us get in there and clean it off. It kind of worked like a razor blade with a long extension on it. So once again, back to the products we recommend. Dexter's made in America. This is their boning knife, and I'll put a link in the description to where you can find these. These things are made in America, and just Dexter makes, in our opinion, the finest quality knives out there for our application. This boning knife is actually one of our favorites for filleting fish. Once you've got it good and cleaned off of all the caulk and sealant residue, you want to dry out the hull real well and have a good inspection in that. You want to make sure that there's not any water intrusion, any damage to the fiberglass, or any wood that might be in there. We found all of ours to be in great shape. The original caulk was still in there and still pliable, so we just moved on with it once we got it good and cleaned out. When we got to our scuppers, we discovered that the new ones were a little bit longer than the original ones, even though these were the ones that were supposed to be used for our hull. So we decided we were probably going to have to make a quick trim on it. To make our measurements, we used an adjustable ruler. Just simply measured the old one, set the distance on the ruler on that, got the new one, measured it up, marked it, ready to go. We did find that it was an awkward position to cut with that flange end. You kind of had to support the cut end. So we didn't want to get our hands that close to the blade anyway. So we discovered that a little shop broom from Harbor Freight has a wooden handle on it that is just the perfect size to fit under the cut end, support it so that the blade doesn't want to bite and move the cut or piece around, and made for a much safer cut as we were able to get our hands away from the blade. So if you're doing this project, we highly recommend finding something that'll help you make this cut if you have to make the trim. Use a razor blade to trim off any excess that's left over after you cut it. You want to make sure it's clean. Now the process is to simply reinstall the new scuppers. So what you want to do for this part is make sure that hull is clean and dry and start to install your sealant. For this one, we chose to go with 3M 4200. And you hear a lot of people talk about the more famous older brother of 4200, which is 5200. You hear them talk about it in other YouTube videos and guys that work on boats a lot. What we have found in our experience is 5200, although it's a great product, when it cures, it becomes very, very, very hard. And it is considered a permanent bond. So when you go in the future to change these scuppers again, if you would use 5200, you would likely do a lot of damage to the gel coat trying to get it removed from the boat. 4200, on the other hand, stays pliable and soft over time, and so it allows you to, in the future, remove whatever you have sealed with it. It is still perfectly good, for through-hole fittings and scuppers like this. And so we chose to go with it. To put it in there, we just put a bunch in the hole and kind of smeared it around inside of there. I'm a big fan of over sealing things, so I put as much in there as I can fit and worry about cleanup later. You want to make sure it's pressed into all the little cavities and everything in there to make sure that you got a nice seal. Everything's covered with a little bit of sealant so that you don't have any issues in the future. To reinstall, it's pretty straightforward. The smaller piece goes inside the boat and the big flange piece goes on the outside, and they simply click together or push together. And to put these together, the smaller one here is the outer piece. The bigger one goes inside of this. So this one will be against the hull of the boat, and we want to load up the whole outside of it with a bunch of sealant, get it good and against the shoulder and the flange edge of it, and make sure that you've got plenty in there because this is going to be what's out against the hull. When you install it, pretty straightforward. You just lay it into place and put your hand on it and give it a firm squeeze into the hull. This is seating that caulk and sealant into there, and you want to see that sealant squeeze out against the outside of the flange there. That indicates that you've got a good full seal in there. For the outer piece, this piece goes inside the other one, so we just caulked it on the shoulders and the flange edge. Get a good bit of that, and we'll focus on making sure it seals against the boat. And to install it, it goes just click straight in. One thing to pay attention to though is you want that screw straight up. That screws the flapper on, and you want to make sure that that flapper is open on the bottom. So you hold it from the inside and then place it into place. Once you get it in there set where you want it, you give it a few firm whacks and it'll start to clip into place. And you'll see here as we press it in, it starts to push some of that caulk out around the edges, and you're getting pretty close. But to make sure that it's fully seated and secured in there, you want to get your dead blow hammer again, hold it from the inside and give it some pretty solid whacks. This will help to make sure it's clipped all the way into its very tightest setting, and you want to see all that sealant starting to squeeze out around the edges. We reach into our box of rags that are t-shirts rags, and we highly recommend these for any shop, especially this project. You're going to go through a bunch of rags. We use these t-shirt rags. They take them in, it's like rejects from the factory. They take them and cut them into shop rag size and sell them by the pound. So we highly recommend these kind of rags for this project. When you're wiping this stuff off, you want to wipe a little bit, fold the towel, wipe a little bit more. This step is basically just removing as much as you can. And then we'll come back by with some acetone here in a second, which really cleans this up really well. We've also heard that WD-40 cleans up 4200 really well. So if you guys know of any other tricks like that, let us know in the comments. But we'll just go through and make sure everything, get as much off as we can. It's gonna leave some residue. This is really just removing bulk caulk at this point. Once you get to the point you're ready to really do some cleanup, get you a little bit of acetone, pour it on the rag. Once again, make sure your gloves are on and start really doing the cleanup that makes it look nice, gives you a good professional appearance to everything. This is really critical right here for this step. This 4200 does require 24 hours to set up, so make sure you're able to leave the boat out, let it cure for 24 hours. Once you've wiped it clean, the project is complete.